So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Thirsk and Malton Area Committee. Please note the meeting is being filmed and recorded and will be uploaded to the website in due course. If you wish to record the meeting yourself, then please give due regard to the Council's protocol on audio-visual recording and photography at public meetings. If the fire alarm sounds, please exit the chamber by the emergency exits located at the entrance and to the rear of the chamber and congregate in the visitors' car park. I'd like to remind members and officers to speak clearly and audibly when addressing the meeting. I'd also say that the registrar, whose office is across the corridor, has a lot of registry of deaths this morning, so if we could be mindful to that, and when we leave the chamber, if we could wait until we're outside, if we want to have a natter, just to show some respect for the bereaved who'll be coming in. Yes, good point. I can't see from here, Steve. It's open. Right. So coming to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies. Have we had any apologies, Nikki? Okay. Sorry, yeah. So I'll read those out with apologies from councillors Duncan, Sladden, and Dad. So item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 13th of June 2025. Are there any issues around the accuracy of those minutes? So are we all agreed that they are correct and we adopt those? Okay, thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest. Has anybody any declarations of interest on the items on the agenda? Seeing anybody? Okay, thank you. So we come to item 4, which is public questions and statements. So we've had one public question submitted. This is from Mr. Andrew Jenkins. So Andrew, if you'd like to come forward, you have 3 minutes to give your question. And if you press the green button, hopefully that will activate the microphone. Thank you.
There's a little red light, so that sounds promising.
That's good.
Excellent. Councillors, thank you very much for taking the time to answer this question today. My question is regarding the Mayor's new tourism tax. Was North Yorkshire Council consulted regarding the idea of a new tourism tax for North Yorkshire by the Mayor? If not, why not? And will tourism bodies such as the Filey Tourism and Trade Association on the front line be consulted regarding its implementation, or not before any sort of local tax like this is implemented? So that was the question. I followed it up with an additional line. Businesses in hospitality are already dealing with excessive rises in costs by government tax, food and energy and wages, and they can't afford additional price rises at this time. The situation may be different in international tourist hotspots like York. The situation may be different in international tourist hotspots like York, but areas that rely on domestic tourism, such as coastal areas, are very different.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So I have a reply from Tony Watson, who's the head of tourism, which I will read out.
Yep.
The Mayor of York and North Yorkshire has publicly supported gaining the powers to apply a visitor levy. In the recent budget, the Chancellor confirmed that these powers will be made available to mayoral authorities and announced that a national consultation on the proposal is now open. If the Mayor decides to implement a visitor levy, it will be introduced and administered as an initiative by the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. North Yorkshire Council is now considering its position and will actively engage in both the national and regional consultations. We strongly encourage all interested parties and businesses to participate in these consultations and share their views. We particularly encourage Filey Tourism and Trade Association to respond with their expert knowledge through the Mayor's consultation via Policy Lab and through the national consultation process. In addition, Filey TTA is represented on the Visit North Yorkshire Advisory Group. The Visit North Yorkshire team is currently finalising plans for the next meeting, which will provide an opportunity for the Mayor and his team to hear feedback directly from stakeholders. So do you have any reply to that, Andrew?
Some of that is very good to hear. I'm actually on that tourism meeting group. So I will be partaking of that, but certainly from we've had no indication or no inquiry from the Mayor's office prior to these announcements being made, whether this would be even a good idea in the first place. I would also feed back to councillors here that should such a thing be implemented, it needs to be very carefully constructed so that the monies from that are not just disappearing into a general pot. The monies raised in other areas around the world, and I've travelled very extensively throughout Europe, where tourist taxes are implemented, tends to be in the larger towns and cities, but even in smaller places, but the monies raised go back into the communities in which they are raised, not into a wider general pot. The other part I would say is for businesses, if this is done through, and we're getting a bit into the nitty-gritty of how something like this might occur, the businesses, how it is declared to the relevant body where the money will be going to will be an issue, and also how that money is actually taken from the customer, and also whether it is just those businesses that are accommodating people staying overnight, or whether it is a wider tourism tax into restaurants and other businesses.
Yes. Okay. So I think obviously that's great, and I think that all those points are incredibly valid. And I mean, some of them, like, you know, why wasn't we North Yorkshire consulted prior to, etc., are more questions, unfortunately, for the Mayor, who's not in attendance today. No. But what I want to do is just bring our coastal members in on this. I don't want to open this up as a debate, so thank you for your question, Andrew. But I'll just I'll have a couple of comments from our coastal members, and then what we'll do is we'll feed all your comments back to Tony Watson, so he's aware. And if you can please, through your committee, obviously raise these and hold the Mayor to account on these as well. We will. Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think what struck me last week, I watched the broadcast of the Scarborough Whitby Area Committee, and when Labour councillors raised it, they were muted in their support, to say the least, notably muted, in particular around the issue about where the money would be collected into. And I think the point was made very well about the difference between a hotel, a B&B, and an Airbnb. And how do you actually, how much will it actually cost to collect from individual Airbnbs as opposed to a hotel? And how do you identify somebody's here for tourism or for business or for whatever other reason? I think what has frustrated me, it's very clear from talking to Andrew that FTTA weren't consulted, but it's also very clear that the Scarborough businesses on the coast, the representative organisations, were not consulted either. And I'm at a loss as to how the Mayor came to a conclusion that this was a fantastic idea, and then went and lobbied the Chancellor without even the courtesy of talking to these businesses, given that what is happening at the moment. And I've made this point to people, it's all very fine having a tourism tax, but if there aren't going to be any hospitality businesses left, and that is where we are going, because some of these guys are shutting down on the coast, then you're going to have smaller and smaller tourism numbers because you won't have any facilities for them to use. And to put it mildly, it is frustrating. And I just think we need to raise better public awareness. There's too many people think, oh, it's just another tax. It's not. It is part of a raft of measures that are really, really hammering this hospitality sector, particularly on the coast.
Thank you. Thank you. Sam, did you want to comment?
I'll be brief. You know, and I'll try and not cover anything that's been said before. Firstly, thank you to Andrew for coming. I did speak to Andrew last week about it as chair of Filey Tourism Association. I think the biggest problem that we've got here is the lack of consultation. And it seems to be with most things that there is a big lack of consultations to the people that it affects. And I think we must remember that on the coast, our tourism is seasonal. Nobody's there now. You know what I mean? I can park anywhere I want on my street now. You know what I mean? The town is quiet. It's lovely at the present time. But for the hoteliers, it's quiet. And you know what I mean? This is another tax. From talking to many hoteliers, they had a meeting this week, and they're struggling. They're struggling with their high costs. They're struggling with the cost of goods. You know what I mean? And they are proper struggling. You know, they're struggling with the fact the minimum wage has gone up, and they're looking to think, what should we be doing April next year when all these are affecting us? So, and the other big thing that I have is, you know what I mean, we know with the 14 million that they're going to collect from the absorbent double council tax on holiday homes, you know what I mean? That it's not going to be,
Sam.
yeah, that it's not going to be spent in the specific area that it should be spent locally. And if they do this tourism tax, there should be more consultation, and it should be ring fenced for the area that it's collected in. Thank you.
That's a point well made. So thank you very much, Andrew. And all of those, your views and the views of the members will all be fed back to Tony Watson, and obviously come back to us if you find there's a sticking point or you find that the mayoral office is not listening to your concerns. Thank you. So item 5 now is an update by the local MP. So we've had a written representation from Sir Alec, which I think you should have all had and seen. So I'd now like to welcome Kevin Hollingreich, MP for Thirsk and Malton, to give us an update on the situation in central government. Thank you very much for attending this morning, Kevin.
Early start. Good morning. Plenty to talk about, I guess, if you want to talk about what's happening in Westminster. But I guess really more importantly, I guess where our responsibilities coincide is with local issues. I'll probably focus more on that. Very happy to answer any questions about some of the shenanigans that's happening in Westminster as well, if you'd like to do that. But
we're grateful, and obviously if you could touch on the tourism tax, I think that might be very welcome.
I'm going to do it. Should we start there? Can I just say I'm totally against it. I think there are enough taxes, both in terms of the level of taxes now imposed on businesses and individuals. I think we're at record levels, 38.2% of GDP, record levels of tax. And so I criticise my own government for that. So I have no problem criticising this government for that. It's totally the wrong thing. And this is another tax, another complexity, as Councillor Donahue McCreef quite rightly said, against a backdrop of a rising number of challenges, particularly for retail, leisure, hospitality, all who will be affected by such a tax. So totally against it. It'll probably cost as much to collect as it will you collect in from it. So and the fact is, I hear from the comments made by various contributors, the fact it's been done without consultation is simply wrong. So there's got to be something in the main. You never get consensus in politics. It's very difficult to do so, but you need some kind of degree of consensus. But as I say, when you've got stuff that's happening to pubs and hospitality are now at just a breaking point with the jobs tax, with the business rates increase, which I think the average pub is now £11,000 higher in terms of business rates than it was a year ago, and the employment rights bill coming down the track as well, which are all very damaging. So if you want these things to stay alive, and we do, hugely important part of the wider economy, then we need to make sure that the burdens on them are as little as possible, both in terms of the tax itself, which is bound to be a disincentive, but also the bureaucracy around collecting it. So definitely would support any moves to try and push back on it. In terms of some of the other issues, very concerned about the proliferation of solar developments on agricultural land. Totally the wrong place for them. Best and most versatile land. It's quite clear in planning rules that we should avoid wherever possible best and most versatile land, yet we see application after application being considered and being passed on the basis that we've also got a climate emergency. What a local authority is doing taking the climate emergency into account. That's a responsibility of national government. It's just beyond me. And that was something Rydale did when in council, as well as North Yorkshire seems to be taking that into account. I think it's totally wrong. And but as well, what doesn't seem to be taken into account is the cumulative impact of these solar farms. I mean, you've got Cese at the moment. It's been surrounded by them, by current and future plans. Simply wrong. Those communities will feel that they're being held hostage by those kind of all those applications, and again, it feeds into the fact that this is a green and pleasant land that relies on that beauty for tourism. So I've obviously corresponded with Councillor Les, the leader of the council, and the chief executive about making these points that these things need to be taken into account in planning decisions. Quite understand that the central government's position on it is difficult, and is making things more difficult in terms of what a potential appeal route would determine. But nevertheless, I think those points need to be taken into account in terms of the perspective of planning officers. A64. I know there was a motion, I think, from the council about urging local MPs to support the dualling A64. I don't need any urging of anybody. Thank you very much. I've always been very keen to see dualling the A64. We do need, given it's a Labour government and the way politics works, we need every Labour elected member, whether it be a member of Parliament or a councillor or indeed the elected mayor, to really put their shoulder to the wheel in terms of supporting dualling the A64. Again, it's something I criticise my own government for not pushing ahead with, and there shouldn't be any. I think if you honestly believe those things, dualling is important for the local economy in Thirsk and Malton, and I very much do, and the wider North Yorkshire region, then that's something we should all be willing to push and support. So keen to make sure we do that, and I know the North Yorkshire Council has always been advocates of dualling too. Given the Just Dual It campaign that you were supported. Home to school transport is still a very big issue, of course, and as I said the last time I came here, I can understand the broad principle. I can perfectly understand the funding backdrop that you have to consider when you're making decisions. I don't have a problem with change as such. There needs to be a more nuanced, considered approach to specific cases. Some of the cases that come across your desk are simply unfair and unworkable. So again, more discretion and judgment would be sensible. The second home premium, again, that's controversial with certain individuals, usually individuals who own second homes, to be fair, in the council area. But nevertheless, you do understand those people, many of whom do put a lot back into the local community. I'm not against it. I've never spoken against it, but I do think that the monies raised need to be dedicated to where they were meant to be dedicated to, which is the provision of affordable homes for local people. And North Yorkshire's got a good record in terms of that. And I think the more you talk about your good record in terms of that, because not every council has done that. Some of the councils have used it to support other spending commitments. But I think the more that we push for that to remain the case, the better. And I have written to Richard Flinton again, just to clarify exactly how much has been dedicated in terms of the amounts raised to affordable homes. Farley Town Bus, still an ongoing issue, and obviously Councillor Cross is here, and it's something we worked on together, and we'll continue to do that. We're still waiting for this business case from the Mayor's office, which we're pushing on. We can't do a lot until we've got that, but there are some, as well as potential funding from the local authority, from North Yorkshire, and potentially from councillors in any kind of discretionary budgets you may have. But also in terms of the town council, and but also there are private sector sources of funding that we have communicated to the Mayor's office that we've discussed with them. So there are potential avenues for funding of a localised town bus, which we very much appreciate in the town. So still fighting in Westminster, I think, as you are too, against the family farm tax, family business tax, some horrendous examples of families that have been affected by this, including ones that I saw in Hummonby recently, the Emerson family, who sadly now, Mr. Emerson, the elder, has passed away. He's in his 80s, but for his last year of his life, he was wondering whether he was going to pass away before the 6th of April next year or after it, which would have made a huge difference in terms of the impact of that tax. It's hugely unfair and punitive, and it affects farms and businesses, and we should all collectively push against it. And think you did a motion against it at some point in time in the past. So thank you for doing that. And finally, just to finish, it's Small Business Saturday tomorrow. So we're very proud of our small businesses, our towns. I noticed Pickering was there in lights in terms of the Telegraph this week. Great to see the efforts of Pickering in terms of trying to revitalise our town centres and local shops. So whether it be Pickering, whether it be Malton, whether it be Helmsley, Filey indeed, let's all support our small businesses tomorrow and every day indeed.
Thank you very much, Kevin. So certainly the second homes tax is ring fenced for housing, I think, which is widely supported in the chamber. Yes. So we'll take questions, and my saying that has activated Sam. So I'll take Sam with the first question.
Well, firstly, I'm going to talk about home to school transport. I didn't think it really did affect me a lot, but you see some of the things that actually come out that they want to stop to pick a young lad 11-year-old up, and they want him to walk along the Filey Cliffs and then walk back into the town from Primrose Valley along a cliff at 3:30 on an evening and 8 o'clock on a night. Absolutely ridiculous. I didn't think it had affected me. I think the lady has written to you, Kevin, but you know what I mean, I walk, every Saturday I normally walk to Scarborough for my exercise for the week, or my main part of exercise for the week. And you know what I mean, I don't walk on the cliff in winter. I walk along the road, and it's just absolutely ridiculous that they come up with a young 11-year-old boy, in cold, blowing a gale. You ought to go to see the sea at present time when it's blowing in. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. But, that is one fight that I think we're both fighting there, Kevin. I think the other fight that we're both fighting is, we talk about the second home premium. There were over 100 people on the 22nd of November attended a meeting in Filey about how unjust it was. And some of them wouldn't have minded if the money had been spent. The 4 million is not spent in Filey, and building affordable homes or homes in Skipton is not local to the Filey area. Not one penny of the 4 million collected has been spent in Filey. And that's what people are objecting to. And that's why if the tourism tax, if it does become ever cost effective to collect it, must be kept local for the local people. And that's about it.
Thanks, Sam. Do you want to respond, Kevin? Thank you very much. Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and forgive me putting my highways and transport portfolio head on. Just a couple of points I will make. I do sit on the Mayoral Combined Authority Transport Board, and obviously with my counterpart from York, and I try and fight North Yorkshire's corner as hard as I can against the York-centric arrangements that I think I will call it, and that's coming out to play, I think, with the tourism tax and many other things at the moment. The point I want to make, I do push on the A64. What does concern me is that I don't think we have the support of the mayor on that. And the reason I say that is because he goes on about trying to get half-hour trains to the coast. And I think that the bit that he doesn't get in the rural geography of North Yorkshire is that car will always have a role to play. The trains will not get people to work on time. And that brings me nicely on to my second point, which is the other important traffic transport we have in the lack of transport we have in the rural North Yorkshire is the bus. The major development here with the rural bus franchising scheme. I met the Mr. Lightower, the bus minister, came to visit the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority. I think we spent 90% of the day in York, and we came to Malton for 20 minutes, which to me just summed up, you know. Well, no, they weren't stuck on the A64. I think that was, I think that was by design. But the point I wanted to make is, you know, I'm sure every council in this room gets representations from their constituents, their electorate, in relation to the lack of buses. And even when buses are scheduled, they don't always turn up. I mean, the experience we have in my part of the world, the local Reliance bus company went out, you know, dropped their routes and Transdev took over. I think we had a 25% delivery on time at one stage. It has gone up, I think, to about 60%. But when people have got hospital appointments, they cannot rely on those bus services. So, and the question is, I just want your views really, you know, they've given £500,000 for this rural bus franchising projects, pilot scheme, sorry. Have people seen the 5 areas? I'm still trying to get my head around whether the £500,000 is to do a tabletop exercise or whether it's actually going to deliver some services. And that's a question I will be asking the mayor next time we meet. But I just wonder your views on rural bus franchising. People have been involved in North Yorkshire longer than me. You know, it's a real challenge, the geography of North Yorkshire. We've pumped money into buses. We don't have that money anymore. The responsibility for an integrated transport network now sits with the mayoral combined authority. It's time for them to deliver because A, they've got the responsibility now, and also they've got the money. So I just wonder your views on that and how we're going to improve the services of buses for our communities across rural North Yorkshire.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Okay. In. I was going to ask a A64 question actually, having led the debate in the transport environment to try and reframe how we position it a little bit more. I was talking to you about this, we're putting Malton back on the map on it, just to get the awareness on economic development for this area being part of the factor for the decision-making process, because I think it does need to be reframed rather than going down the same route again. Because unfortunately, the vote was 7-7, and the Green Party voted against it. So, better. Is that any better? Excellent. Can't start being nightclubbing again. So it was trying to reframe it. Unfortunately, the Green Party voted against it in the Transport Committee, to which actually I think Carl was quite surprised. Actually, it was a cross-party vote to try and break it into segments, to actually look at the application in a more nuanced way rather than just this. And I fear it's just going to end up on some leaflets again. It's going to end up getting kicked down the pan again. We need to think about how it frames in with the economic development of the area. But my question actually, I'm going back to form, Kevin, I'm afraid, is you just said that, and I know you haven't used the term climate emergency you've never used that framing of what's happening with the climate change. But when you've just said I don't understand why the council's responsibility on it, are you saying the council shouldn't be taking that sort of action at all? Or are you saying that it should be left to the government? And if that's the case, do you trust the government to actually deliver that in the way without our input? Because that would worry me considerably as a council, that relying on the government to deliver this sort of thing without the local knowledge. We're having just talked about the mayor, for instance, with the A64. That would worry me a little bit. But I'm just trying to work out, are you saying no climate action, or just don't call it a climate emergency?
Sorry, because you've got the clear the East Coast, it means you're not going to have any population on the east of the East Coast for obvious reasons. So it means we haven't got the population numbers that stack up to make it a medium to high rating, which is what you want in terms of benefit cost ratio. So it's always going to be more difficult. That's not to say it shouldn't be delivered. And ultimately, it's a political decision. And what we tried to do in Parliament for years was make sure the ministers were lined up to say, understood the business case was never going to stack up to alongside other ones, but we changed the Green Book rules to mean these kind of decisions could be made in terms of other kind of social grounds, and to try and certainly boost the economy, particularly on the East Coast, that definitely needs a boost. So ultimately, that's why the support of the mayor is really important, and the support of every Labour member of Parliament in the region. And that's not been forthcoming, to be honest. And I can't dress that up in any other way. Nor should we. We should press upon every elected politician in the region to support that and to put pressure on the government to deliver on it. So, of course, we've all got a contribution to make for climate emergencies, Steve, in terms of climate action, of course, but I don't think anybody is against a transition from a fossil fuel environment to other forms of energy production on a mixed basis. We will need other things like gas for decades, so we shouldn't be averse to gas exploration or nuclear, and a variety of different solutions move towards decarbonisation of the grid. I'm not against that. My issue was using that in planning terms. And that's what Rydale did when it had responsibility for these things. Despite the fact that at that point in time it wasn't a material consideration in the MPPF, they made it one. And so we're couching the application terms for applications. Well, that's not the MPPF, is it? Okay. Okay, I don't accept that, but we can have other conversation. But to me, the point it should be made, it's very, very clear in planning rules that solar developments, ground-mounted solar, should avoid best and most versatile areas, which are grades of land from 1 to 3B, to 3A. Sorry. So I think those considerations outweigh the need. Food security should outweigh the need for energy security when it comes to productive farmland. That's my point. And cumulative impact in terms of our areas as well should be taken into account. I don't think that's been sufficiently taken into account by recent correspondence I've seen from North Yorkshire Council.
Yeah, come back on that.
Right. Yeah, you know what, actually, I had a go at Solar UK a few weeks ago about the way they're imposing their developments on people. It's no different to what the fracking companies were doing back 10 years ago. And this, building their social license is completely gone amiss. It's the same process, it's the same techniques, it's the same PR companies doing the job for what was gas companies 10 years ago to energy companies now. But on the stuff, again, the food versus energy conversation is a really nuanced one, because they are weighted equally against each other. And I do think we need to have a little bit of work on that. But one of the key things I would be looking at actually is how the communities are completely taken out of the whole situation again. It riles me up so much when a company goes, "Oh, we'll give you £1 million for local community." Well, that village hall's not going to be able to spend £1 million. It's just not going to happen. So we need to work out ways where we can really help communities that on the ground benefit from this stuff. It's the same conversation. It just flips over the other side of the fence. With regards to the A64, so in the transport meeting, we also had an economic development report come through as well. And I actually asked them, I said, have you taken into account some of the economic development potential of the A64 being dualled to Malton? And they hadn't, which surprised me when you're trying to build a...
Who hadn't, sorry?
The economic development report came through, and I said, well, are you taking into account the potential of dualling the A64 in this economic development strategy you're trying to do to bring forward? It hadn't really crossed their minds that the potential of Malton, for instance, with the the new potential link road being built, for instance, the fact that we have the industrial estate expanding, we've got Eden Camp expanding, all these places expanding, we're becoming an economic driver in North Yorkshire. That dualling the A64 even to Malton wasn't taken into account, and it just surprised me that conversation needs to be had, because I reckon the value of dualling it, at least to this part of the area, which would help the other parts of the area, would really help that business case a bit more. So I do think we need to have a little bit more conversation around that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, certainly National Highways, their report on it, including benefit cost ratio, does take into account economic development that might follow. I don't think they've sufficiently taken that into account. So any economic development work you're doing as a council could easily feed into the work that they're doing, and certainly could be used to try and convince ministers who are ultimately going to make a decision on this that actually that's been underbaked, underestimated, and therefore we should give it the go ahead.
It's exactly the reason why the mayor is talking up trains. So that conversation we should be having with the mayor as well about this, to say, well, that's fine, but you ain't going to put an HGV on top of a train, and when we're having this development here, we need to really start thinking about what we're trying to do here for jobs and everything else as well.
Okay, thank you. Michelle.
I'm going to speak about the A64, but it's a slightly different issue, which actually, to me, it's an issue around trust in politics, actually, and the A64. And I'll recount a story from the North Yorkshire Council elections in 2022. I was delivering my leaflet around Sherburn. Met this guy in the village. He took the leaflet. He said, "Not another one promising to dual the A64." And I said, "The good news is I'd like to see the road dualled, but I'm not so stupid as to promise you that I'm going to dual it." And the leaflet he was referring to was a Conservative Party leaflet. He then proceeded to tell me, he said, "That's great," he said, "but for 40 years, the Conservative Party have been promising me that they would dual A64. He then went on to explain that he'd been transport manager at a major production facility in the area. He'd met with the previous MPs, he'd met with various people from the then North Yorkshire County Council, all of whom had promised him, "Don't worry, the road will be dualled." He said, "It's decades later, I'm still waiting." Now, in 2022, he did not vote Conservative. And the reason he didn't vote for it, because he just said, what's the point? I'm being continually promised something that they have no intention of delivering. And while I have no time for the mayor's position on the A64, the argument that the mayor is somehow to blame for the A64 not being dualled, I'm sorry, does not wash with the average member of the public. You had decades. And the problem is now we're still promising the same thing decades on. And if you look at the national position, political position where the public are, the reason they are expressing their views through opinion polls is purely because they simply do not have trust in promises that have been made before that are never delivered. And I suppose the question for everybody in this room, and you, Kevin, why should anybody believe us now when we didn't tell them the truth in the past?
Thank you, Michelle. Well, I can't have made promises for 40 years because I've only been here for 10. And he said if you talk Conservative government was only for 14, not for all that time, those 40 years. I've never promised anybody I'll dual the A64. All I promised them I'll do, I'll fight hard on their behalf to try and get it delivered. It's always going to be a challenge, hence the 40 years. Councils do not dual the A64. So I don't think you can blame North Yorkshire Council either. You know, I think my experience in the time I've been Member of Parliament, have nothing but support from North Yorkshire Council for the dualling of the A64. As I say, this is always going to be difficult to deliver because the benefit cost ratio is low. We should be clear with people about that. I've always tried to be clear with people about that and make the case together to try and get it delivered. Where this was previously, before Rishi Sunak was Chancellor, it had fallen off the development pipeline. The National Highways are not even going to do the necessary work on it to find out exactly how much it would cost and select a route, choose a route, and then decide how much it's going to cost. He got that back on the development pipeline because of the pressure, because he understood the case we were making for it, myself and other people in the Just Dual It campaign. So we did make progress on that, and that's where it was. And when the new government took over, now, of course, you can blame governments of both sides who've been in power over the last 40 years, and I accept that totally. But what I've always tried to do with this is not be political about it, but equally, I'm going to call out people who don't support it. I think that's perfectly reasonable. You know, I wouldn't blame Mayor Skaith or anybody, other Labour politician, Alison Hume or anybody else, if they don't deliver on it, because as you could say, we haven't delivered on it either. You could say, I do blame them if they won't vocally support it. And that's my point.
Yeah, Michelle.
And I take your point. I don't accept Mayor Skate's position, and I've had a go with him in this chamber over his position quite bluntly. But I do think we need to be aware the public have really had enough, and this goes for me as well as other people in political parties, of us all making promises that simply never get delivered. And every time somebody sees this story, the response on social media is not well done. They just said, here they go again. And it is actually damaging to trust in all of us. And that's why now I don't even put it on my leaflets, because I'm wasting people's time. They know I'm wasting their time. They know I'm just putting it in and saying it, but it's not actually. And so it's how do we actually make some of these things happen so people actually have faith in what we're saying. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair point. Actually, I mean, in terms of trusting people having politics, and you know, which is, I don't think I've ever put anything in my leaflets I've not intended to try and deliver. Although you can't always deliver what you want to deliver, but it's a choice we've got to make, isn't it? You know, are we ambitious for this area, or do we try to make sure we get the funding from the local government to make it fairer, from national government to make it fairer? And even though it's going the other way, of course we try. We've got to be ambitious. We've got to fight the corner of it. If that sometimes means we push for things that we're not guaranteed to get, I think we'd be doing the area a disservice if we only push for things we knew we'd get. Because what's the point of us being here if we're going to get it anyway? We've got to push for more, and that's the approach I'll always take while being realistic about the chances of getting them.
Thank you, Caroline.
Yeah, morning, Kevin. Thank you for coming. You know my position on the A64. It's well documented. Next week, this council will consider a very large housing scheme in this town.
Where, sorry?
In this town.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That will add, if it's passed, about, I would say, probably 1,300 vehicles onto the roads of North Yorkshire between probably York and Scarborough. That's an issue for the A64. We've now got a housing target of over 4,000 houses a year. How we're going to deliver that, I'm not really sure. But, you know, it nevertheless, that's a driver for the Highways Agency to take on board when it's considering the road usage, because we are going to have to deliver all that building works. But more importantly, there are two things with that. We've got over 600 houses that could have the possibility to have solar panels on the roof rather than on agricultural land. And that's not going to happen because it's not in the building regulations. So that's an issue for me. The second issue is about water security and sewage security, because right now we are passing applications with Grampian conditions because Yorkshire Water can't deliver on the wastewater treatment facilities, and that's a big issue. It's a big issue where we've passed housing in Pickering because we haven't got the capacity in Pickering. We need ministers to step up to the plate and make the water companies deliver. And right now it's not even in their 5-year management plan, so we could be 10 years 20 years away from this being delivered, and that's not going to give us the houses that we all know we need. So I'm asking you to take that back to see what can be done about that, because at the moment it's all happening far too slowly. Thanks, Kevin.
Quickly.
So it's interesting that the Yorkshire Water part of this using the Grampian rule to try and stop hacks. So this is now Catterick, I've seen, is in the news now as well. They've used the same objection. We kind of touched on this in one of the meetings, the development plan, that they're just passing the buck onto the councils and the developers. But I spoke to Wessex Water and some other water companies, and they're actively working with developers to develop different ways of building the houses. And solar panels, actually, that's within our gift as a council. We can say that in our development plan already. We're allowed to, but for some reason we chose not to a couple of years ago. But that is a really, I think Caroline makes a really key point on Yorkshire Water here, is they need to step into this because it's their fault their systems can't take the sewage. It's not the developer's fault. It's certainly not the council's fault. We're cleaning up their messes. And I do wonder whether we need to be starting to charge Yorkshire Water for some of this even more, to cleaning up some of the mess in the environment as well. But this use of the Grampian rule is very, very mischievous by Yorkshire Water. It's a cop-out in what they're doing. And I do think that's certainly a real good attack point at Parliament level to call them out on this, because other companies aren't doing it. It's just Yorkshire Water by the looks of it.
Yeah, thank you. Caroline, you make a very good point in terms of the uplift in housing. I think North Yorkshire got 200% increase, I think, into its housing requirement. With York, I think it's 200. But where York has got 20% uplift, which seems just perverse, weird. Other than there's some politics in that somewhere. But I think it's a very fair point. I don't think we've taken that into account with any lobbying we have done on the A64, and that's perhaps something we should do together. Both the North Yorkshire Council and myself and the other North Yorkshire MPs, saying, because the exact point, this was much needed before you increased the targets by threefold. So that's something we'll take away, and I'll suggest we do right at a joint level on that, and ask obviously then Mayor Skaith and others to support it. In terms of solar, a future home standard it's a standard in terms of getting house building too. That's the most important thing. Whether you achieve that standard through things like air source heat pumps or solar, I'm very relaxed about in terms of how you do that. Solar, UK is not the most efficient place to use solar energy to drive solar energy from, for obvious reasons. But I don't care how developers meet that standard, as long as they meet the standard that's expected of them, of course, which is something that is a requirement in terms of future planning applications. But the point in terms of infrastructure is key to it. Any housing development's got to come with the relevant infrastructure. We didn't always get this right. I'm very happy to work with you in terms of making sure Yorkshire Water do the right thing and we can deliver those houses without any difficulties from them.
Thank you. Yeah, come back then, Caroline.
Thank you for that, because it's really important. Because if this application goes through next week, we'll have passed in the last 6 months 1,000 houses. We're desperate for these houses for our families that want to move into accommodation, but we are now at a situation where the houses could be built, Kevin, and they can't be lived in because they can't be connected to the wastewater treatment centres, and that's just perverse. It's just ridiculous that we are delivering what's being asked of us, or getting to the point where we can deliver, but then we can't do it because a utility company can't meet their legal obligations. And that's the thing. They've got statutory duties under the Water Act and they're not meeting it. And it's a real issue. And then then, as I say, 2,000 cars on the road because we've built 1,000 houses just in Malton and Pickering. Well, yeah,
Okay.
if it gets delivered. But you see what I mean? I'm really, it all melts into a holistic pot of development, economic development, social development, etc. And at the moment, it seems Westminster isn't looking at the holistic view.
Thank you. Alison.
Thank you, Nigel. I'd like to thank Kevin and Alec for their support, because I think I have the most solar panels in North Yorkshire, either in the pipeline or done. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Coming to your point, Councillor Mason, we often find, and Helper B and Brafferton have fallen foul of this, the developers of these solar farms promised the community money, and then it disappeared because it was a different firm. And that is the thing as well, aside from the whole thing that it shouldn't be on agricultural land. Unfortunately, I guess most, a lot of people around this table won't be around in 40 odd years' time when all these things are beyond their useful life. And I really do worry about what's going to happen then. I think we should be looking at getting the developers to put a huge sum of money into a pot for getting the land back into farming land. Because otherwise, what's going to happen? There's going to be fields full of this, and I pardon the expression, crap that will need to be got rid of. We all knew what happened with asbestos. Down the line, are these metals going to contaminate this land and, create problems there? So, and by the time 40 years down the line, it'll be some little person who won't have the money to re-establish that, because they'll sell it off as it goes further and further down the line. So I think that is another issue that we need to be looking at. And I'm sorry, but we in North Yorkshire refuse planning permission for these solar farms, and then the inspector says, we appreciate there's land use, but the overriding thing is it's security. And that was what happened with Husway with the recent inspector's report. And so you get to the point that what is the point of us refusing it if the big boys further up the line will say, sorry, it doesn't matter, it's solar security. So, but anyway, thank you, Kevin, and Alec as well for your support in this, as I'm in the rather unique position of having both of you as my MPs for my division. Thank you.
Steve, I'll let you comment because Alison mentioned you.
Yeah, but there's an irony in that actually, in all this, because you mentioned that a bond can be put in. So I go back to the fracking application. So bonds were put in on the fracking companies to restore the land. So if that's not happening, why is it not happening? And the irony, the complete irony is actually, you tell these companies, and we told the fracking companies this, if you don't build your social license, you're going to not get your applications through. And it's the same advice that should be given to them. If you don't work with the communities, you're not going to get, we were kind of on different fences at the time, but that social license needs to happen. Otherwise, they'll just end up in the same situation and we'll be going round and round in circles as a country and trying to work out what we're doing with our energy. But the bonds we can put in to our planning, because that's what we did in the against the fracking companies. And I still think there is a bond still on Mr. now that's been gathering money over the years for 10 years now, which is becoming a substantial pot of money to help the landowners to restore. Now, this is the interesting bit. The landowners are now setting up companies. That bond is that cost of restoration will be going to the taxpayer. That is a major issue, which the National Audit Office picked up in 2019 on these companies. I suspect that may happen again on solar. So I think we need to be really, really conscious of issuing bonds as a council to make sure in 40 years' time that £500,000 bond that's gone down is enough to restore that land back again to make sure that it stays there for longevity.
Kevin.
That's an interesting point on the bonds. I'm very happy to take those questions away. Ask Mr. Billy Band what his perspective on it is and whether that's part of his current thinking. So I'll take that away. Perhaps you could do the same at North Yorkshire level, whether that's something you can make as a planning condition, because it sounds very sensible to me.
So, thank you very much. I think that's all the questions from members this morning. Kevin, thank you very much for attending and your time, and look forward to seeing you at a future meeting.
Thank you. Merry Christmas to you all.
Merry Christmas.
Cheers.
So we come now to item 6, youth councils, and I welcome James Coppert, who's the Youth Voice Creative Engagement Officer. So very welcome to you this morning, James, and thank you for attending. So I believe you are going to basically explain to us, for those who haven't experienced youth councils, what they are, what benefits they are, and hopefully how, as members, we can engage and help you deliver them. So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me, although I feel I rather clash with the carpet. So, yeah, I'm the Youth Voice Creative Engagement Officer for Scarborough and Rydale, and then cover Send Voice county-wide. Youth councils they're not part of our statutory duty, so they're a bit of a cherry on top of the cake in terms of our delivery. We've got a number set up around the county. Some of those are supported and run by ourselves as a team, and others are run by volunteers and community organisations, which we then support. They're really great things because it gives, first of all, obviously, an opportunity for young people to get involved in democratic services, to have a voice, make changes, speak up for young people, which are often the most kind of unlistened to and demonised in the media group of people in our community. So it's about giving them that voice, an opportunity to promote the positive things that young people do, as well as build their confidence and add things to their CV as well. We have some young people that maybe thinking of Scarborough Youth Council that have struggled in education, but come to the Youth Council and have something really positive to add to their CV going on to further education and the workplace. So it's a brilliant opportunity as well for kind of engagement, and for us as well to ask them their voice on our services and check that we're as a local authority are doing things right for them and getting that kind of 360-degree response and feedback. So really positive. The street in Scarborough is a perfect example of something that actually came from a youth council at the time, and was built as a direct result of their work. So they can make a massive impact. They also feed into regional and national groups as well. So we feed into county-wide groups as well as regional groups, and then going into Parliament with our NYPs as well. So it's a really positive experience for young people, a great journey that we take them on. It's lovely seeing their confidence grow and boost throughout that time. So yeah, if anyone's kind of interested in setting them up in your area, I think what we can offer is we can support in setting them up, support in promotion. We provide training for the volunteers in everything from kind of neurodiversity to doing the DBS checks and supporting those type of things, and supporting getting into the kind of regional and county-wide groups as well.
Thank you, James. So can I ask, so are they linked with a particular town? I mean, are they like a shadow to a town council, or are they broader than that? What's the structure? How do they straddle more than one parish, or are they limited to a parish? How are they set up?
They're very varied, and it's very much so we work to a youth work model, so it's very much from the young people upwards. So it's whatever they decide. So if they choose to link in with the local councils, then they can, and if they choose not to, then they don't have to. So it's up to them how they kind of work it. We've got for example, the Harrogate Youth Council is very much like this. It's run like this in terms of someone chairs the meeting and they take turns to kind of discuss things and debate, etc. Whereas the Scarborough group is very chaotic, different type of young people who run things in their way, and it works in very different ways. So it's very much for kind of their decision, and we're just there to kind of support them to have a voice and support them running it.
Steve.
I like these. Consulting with young people is brilliant, because I was at the town investment planning meeting for Malton and Norton on Wednesday. I was the only councillor there, even though I'm not from Malton and Norton. But we'll leave that to one side after the last debate we had here. But they consulted young people on it, and the results that came through from the different demographics were starkly different. Some were aligned, green spaces, that sort of thing, but other bits were actually, it was quite interesting hearing some of the attitudes of young people on how they are deemed to be in their place in society, and the negativity that they receive is truly, it's a bit shocking. So I fully support doing a youth council, and I know Dan Sladden over in Thirsk is doing something similar, I think, as well. But I'd be interested in having a conversation with you, because I think that engagement, we need to have that engagement in, because I do think we're in danger of ignoring them, thinking we're not ignoring them. And I was pleasantly surprised by the reactions from I think they interviewed the cadets and the scouts. Again, though, it's still a very closed demographic of kids and young people. And I think the council, there is opportunity, particularly working with the schools in particular, to bring different backgrounds, different demographics into that opinion making. So I think it can only be a good thing, as far as I'm concerned.
You, Caroline.
Yeah, James, thank you very much for coming this morning. I am passionate about young people having a voice, but it's how do we engage with those young people? How do we draw them into this conversation and the establishment of a youth council? Because at the end of the day, a few years from now, I might be in a wooden box, but somebody coming up behind, no, somebody coming up behind, we've got to engage with them. We've got to help them understand the relevance of what we do today and what they can do in the future. And that's how we get people engaged in forgive me, I don't want to politicise children because I don't believe in that, but engage them so that they look at what's going on, and then they can look at the future and decide what they want to do and how they want to achieve what they think they want to achieve. But at the moment, I don't think we've got anything over in this side of things apart from Scarborough. So there's a gap between Scarborough and York that we kind of need to fill, and listen to the young people and what matters to them, because that could shape what we do in the future. So I'd be really interested in looking at that, and whether it is scout groups or schools or whatever, there is that disconnect. We're not getting those conversations, and certainly when I was at schools, we had debating societies and things. I don't see that now. I might be wrong, but it's what shaped me when I started to get involved and think about politics.
Sorry, James.
There's been a bit of a disconnect, I think, in terms of not teaching politics in school for many decades now. And I think there is a rising interest in politics in young people. We're seeing a lot more young people engaging in parties on TikTok and things like that. We are struggling in terms of the Rydell area. We've tried setting up youth councils in partnership with the library a couple of times and getting really limited numbers. So we're still trying to figure out whether we need to do TikTok dances to get people there or something. But it's kind of working. Again, what we've been speaking about this morning is that demographic where is we can probably, in terms of getting volunteers and everything to support one youth council in Rydell, but Rydell's a huge area, and it's the same in Scarborough, where we're setting up only a monthly one in Whitby, because people in Whitby aren't going to come to Scarborough for a youth council, and the towns are very, very different. So it's kind of figuring out where to put one and then how to get people there.
I think one of the things we need to identify is what's stopping them coming forward. And I'm not sure whether that, like you say, is the demographic and the travel, and whether we can work on something like that and see if there's a way of addressing those issues. But but we need to, sorry, but I think we need to be in schools and things to see if we can persuade the schools to engage with us on this. And we need to look at the age range, who brings what to the table.
I think Joy wants to come in at this point. Carol.
Yeah, getting a bit historical now. I set up a youth council through Pickering Town Council, what seems like many moons ago, and it was very successful. And it was on the back of the negative publicity that the young people were getting within Pickering. The unfortunate thing is these kids, you get them, they were a constituted body, they had the bank account, they had the chairman, the treasurer, it was wonderful, and then they all left because they went to it, and it's about keeping them engaged. And I'm on the record for saying this: we are monumentally letting our young people down in Rydale and probably throughout North Yorkshire, in that we don't. And I know it's it's not a statutory duty, but there's no youth club. We've got a wonderful building that a lot of money was invested in Pickering, Atmosphere, that has now been taken over and hot desking for council stuff, and there's nothing for the youth. And in order to feel part of society, you have to have something, and even if it's just one space where they can go and feel safe. And I will be contacting everybody about this, because we do want to set up a youth club, and out of that may come a youth council, or maybe we set a youth council up and out of it comes a youth club. But all the time these children are getting older, and some of them are going down the wrong path. So I'm very interested in being involved in something, whether it be a Pickering, Malton based or Rydale based thing, but it does need money, it needs time, and you know, I'm quite happy to work with you. Funnily enough, the two leaders of this group were best friends, Tom and Callum, and both have gone into politics since then. One is staunch right wing, and the other's a lefty, but they still remain friends, which is fantastic. But yeah, so yeah, exactly. So yeah, so I will be contacting you, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Janet.
Oh, is that gone on? Yes. And thank you, James, for your presentation. I just for interest, of course, Youth Voices in my portfolio. The last time I met James was, I think, in the street, not the street youth centre in Scarborough. And James had brought a load of shopping, and we were desperately looking for pans and spoons and utensils and other things to cook a meal with this group of care leavers. And it was fascinating, because you just couldn't find anything, and when he found it, it was dirty, it needed washing. And then when we got the gas, we couldn't find any matches, and it was like this amazingly chaotic experience, which reminded me of being a kid on holiday in Primrose Valley, because it was the same, in a static caravan looking for everything. And I remember Auntie Madge putting salt in the sugar basin, and it was just that kind of experience, and it was fantastic. And there weren't a lot of people there, but it was really great experience to work with. And I really want to come in on the back of what Joy said, because I visited that Pickering Youth Council, and it was brilliant. It really was. And the two characters that she mentions were very active. And we had the Tea Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and they wanted the youth voice to be input to it. And well, don't just discuss the youth voice, bring them. I'll bring you two kids. And I remember picking them up in Middleton and taking them to County Hall, and that experience was really important for them, because they came and to be honest, they spoke as well, if not better, than some of the councillors there, which I probably shouldn't have said. But there are a variety of youth councils and youth clubs and all sorts of things. And please, can I declare an interest here, because I've just remembered as I'm speaking, I'm a trustee for North Yorkshire Youth, so I might just touch on that. So on the back of what Joy said, we do need these things. You know, we've got the Youth Council, the Flying High for the disabled children. And this shows probably how I've got an element of discrimination in me, because I had these very articulate letters coming in from their chairman, oh no, sorry, their secretary, and I was replying to them. And when I went to the youth, the Flying High group, I couldn't find the secretary, and I looked all over for her. And actually, she was the one that was saying nothing, couldn't move in a wheelchair. And I thought, how discriminating have I been, not thinking that someone in a wheelchair could do that. So yeah, they're good for us. They're good for us to see and to see what's happening, and they're good for the children. I think part of this is a trickle down. So if we don't have those basic youth clubs, they're not going to go to that higher level. And what I wanted to say, and where I declared the interest, is we work closely with North Yorkshire Youth. And if anyone wants to start a youth club, they won't do the work for you. But you know how everybody's frightened of, do I need a DBS checked? How do I set it up? All this. North Yorkshire Youth will take that template and work with anybody that wants to set it up. What they won't do, because they can't, as James has said, it's a non-statutory part of the council work. But having said that, it is vitally important, both for feeding into the youth councils and for feeding into democracy locally. So I just wanted to flag that, and to say that I still see your two lads on Facebook, and what a great career they've both made. It's fantastic. And you know, perhaps it's, as you've touched on again, it's that cohort when it moves through, it's building up what comes behind it. Because if you, like us as a council, if you don't build what comes behind, whatever you do is just lost. So I think I've said enough now, but thank you. I just wanted to highlight that.
Do you want to follow?
It's more of a question, actually. It seems to be we have a kind of a united feeling about this. As an ACC, is this something that we should be looking to take forward as an area, as one of our more uses as an area constituency, where we should try and facilitate this, working with the councils to start bringing this together? I know the schools are doing it internally themselves. They're having their own councils. Malton School has a kind of council, but they just do it within the school. And I think Rydell Trust, which is now Norton, of course, I think they do something similar as well. And I think it can't be that hard to the ACC to be the convener of that. We have a venue here for a start. So maybe that's something we should maybe take away and go to the exec member for youth. Or children and families. Oh, yeah. But actually look at that and then take forward. So maybe the ACCs, this is a role we could do as an ACC across North Yorkshire. Each ACC could take up and facilitate it properly to make it happen. Because it does. There's a lot of over-reliance, I think, on volunteers, which I think is good. But volunteers stretch, the same volunteers all the time are doing everything. And I think we need to just be aware of, there's a limited capacity of volunteers across North Yorkshire.
Thanks, Steve. So maybe you can raise that under the work programme item, and we can pop it onto the work programme. Great. Alison.
Thank you. I think it's youth organisations we also need to look at within North Yorkshire, because I believe Rillington Young Farmers have got 60 members aged between 10 and 28. So there isn't a desert of youth organisations around Malton. And I think that is it. At one time, Young Farmers were funded through North Yorkshire, I believe. And like all organisations, these organisations are the starting point for people's life in politics. I started in Young Farmers, my late husband did, John Wheel did, and there are a lot of people sat in that chamber that started their political life, if you like, in the Young Farmers organisation. James, it's nice to meet you. As Young Persons Champion for North Yorkshire, please can you encourage your groups to ask me to come and visit them, because I would like to get around them, because it is so nice. And if we are asked to these events, if I can't make it, I'm sure some of the other people, Caroline, I know, and Janet have been to young people's events, so we can take an interest in the ones that are working. But I agree with you, Steve, we do need to look at provision. There are so many areas where there isn't anything for youth. Because of this problem, you get them joining and then they go off to university, and yeah, you need to get the conveyor belt going. But unfortunately, I do know of a young farmers club in Northallerton that folded because it didn't have that conveyor belt. And I think this is why organisations like the Scouts and the Guides do it well, because once they drop off membership, they then become leaders. And I think that's what we need to look at, getting the process. But again, being wary of setting something up and there's not the will of the people involved to take up the baton. We see that with parish councils, where a parish council folds, we step in as councillors to run it. And what's the point? Because nobody's wanting to do it for themselves. And I think that is another problem. And I think, you know, it's finding the place that wants to have the youth council and then helping them to facilitate it.
Thanks, Alison. So, no. So James, did you want to comment on Alison's? Obviously, she's a youth champion, so it might be great if she could come along and see, you know, the groups that you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Like any support is really encouraged. And just to say, I was a young person that was targeted, and we formed the DIY Collective, which was a youth council, which then got me into youth work, and I've been here for 25 years last month. So it works, yeah.
Karen.
When I first joined the council, Councillor Trotter from, I think it was Knaresborough, had a little debating competition that went out to the schools, and we've kind of lost that. But it brought the children in, and it brought them into the chamber, and they were given a topic. Maybe we could look at perhaps just bolstering that up again and seeing if we can attract youngsters to come and have those discussions, give them a topic, ask schools to facilitate it, get them back in the chamber, and then say, you could be part of a youth team, a youth council, who's interested, but it would get the children in and get them engaged.
There we go. We've got the elections for the NYPs coming up. In fact, it's the deadline today. So we have got a new group of young people kind of coming up that could help kind of facilitate that in their areas. So that's really positive. I was with 4 working class young women last night who have all applied as well in Scarborough, which is absolutely brilliant. So yeah, we are kind of moving things forward, and those NYPs are going to be part of debating, and hopefully they could lead a project like that. That'll be really, really exciting.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to take Malcolm, then Janet, and then Steve. And is okay. Okay, so I'll take Malcolm and Janet then. So Malcolm.
Thanks, Chair. And I'll be very brief. Thank you for your input. I just wanted to put a bit of positivity in here as well. I mean, there's been really refreshing to see everybody's in heated agreement that we need to support these. I represent a rural division. I have got a youth council in one of my rural villages in Shipton by Benningborough. He engages with me, invites me to meetings. So it's not just in town areas, it's also in rural villages. So I just wanted to put that on record that it's really positive. There's a key individual there who's very passionate, very good, and he drives it. And those are the sort of people you want. But it's just refreshing and a real positive that these things are existing, and we need to encourage them right across the piece. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Janet.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to come back on Steve's point, and then I heard other points that I wanted to come back on, so I'll pick up on 1 or 2 of those. Yeah, Steve, isn't it great that we've got something that we all agree on? We all think that is a great thing to work. And your point about the same volunteers, unfortunately, we don't have a magic money machine, so we need volunteers. Without the volunteers, we can't do it. So yes, I know it's the same volunteers, but I'll just move on for the time being. Alison's point about what comes first feeds into that point that you've made, Steve. What comes first, the demand by the children or the facility there that's open to the children. Now, I want to go back to our previous Director of Children's Services. Stuart always said, when I said, why haven't we got these things, you know, why aren't we doing it? He said, because actually kids have got their PlayStations, their internet, they don't actually want to do that anymore. But what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Those kids in isolation, working without that without that community and people of the same age around them, and then they're asking why we've got mental health problems, why they haven't got peers that they respect and things. So I think it really is what comes first, the chicken or the egg, and I think there is a need for it, but it's where we place it. Caroline, as to your point about the debating forums, Councillor Trotter asked me to set up those many years ago, and I think originally there was a political element with them behind them, but they were fantastic, and they went from strength to strength, and until we had regional heats and everything, and the level of debate from those children, the competition grew every year, and in fact we had a youth club at County Hall. It was a disabled children's day at County Hall, and it was getting to lunchtime. They were all a bit, like this, and the youth worker said, "We'll go down into the main chamber." And they were crazy. They were pressing all the buttons. They were all over the place and everything. It was just, and so the officer that was doing it said, "I think Councillor Sanderson would like to take them over now." And I went, "Thank you." And actually, I put my old teacher's hat on, and we set up we elected a chairman and a vice chair and an opposition, and we did it just like we did in council. And those children that had, some couldn't hear, but others were saying, "I'll do that for you. You can't hear, so I'll write it down." And that level of communication within that chamber, and at the end of the day in County Hall, they asked for comments, and the one overwhelming comment was, "We didn't get long enough in the chamber debating." So I'll just leave that with you.
Go on then, Steve, and then we'll.
I completely agree with you, and I think I know the point on money is a key one, but we do have the infrastructure in place. We do have officers like James, for instance. We have anchors as well for me across the county, and maybe so the infrastructure is there. Which I think just maybe a little bit of thinking across some of the departments, maybe just all we need. So you mentioned the holistic approach earlier on, Caroline. Just trying to pull this in a bit more without. It can't be that hard to do. And I think the ACC could act as that centre convener point. Particularly, it doesn't rely on Northallerton to do it. We can actually bring it down to more local level, because then we get local knowledge involved as well. And I think I think it would be. It can't be that much to convene this way. I mean, we play with budgets that are quite small sometimes. I'm sure if I said to Gary Fielding, give us 50 grand back again of our ACC budget, for instance, to fund some of this stuff. So the benefits going forward, actually, the social value in this actually needs to be taken into account. We take kids off the streets. We then stop our police services going out to respond to kids breaking windows. We damage to Pickering toilets comes to mind. So those benefits, So I think those benefits I think need to be taken into account when we ask for funding for this sort of project. I think the ACC is one of our powers we should actually be able to do.
We've all got a locality budget. We could all put £300 in that locality budget and kick it off. So I think there's 15 members of the Thirsk and Malton ACC. Why can't we do that? I put £300 in the pot to kick it all off. Why can't we do that?
Okay.
But it's not viable to pull.
So okay. Well, I think what we'll do is we can pull that into the work programme when we get to the work programme point and do a piece of work around that. So, James, I'm hoping that you haven't been overwhelmed with all that coming at you. But I think definitely you can see all around the table that members are positive about the youth councils. I really appreciate you coming today. I hadn't really understood what youth councils were. They don't really happen in Hambleton, or haven't done until very recently. So it's good to be aware of them. How do you want members to engage with you? What email address would you like members to individually engage with you beyond this meeting?
So it's probably best to go through my manager, Nikki Watkinson. So nikki.watkinson@northyorks.gov.uk.
Fantastic. So we'll share that around, and then obviously individual members can get in contact with you. But as you can appreciate, hopefully we'll get this on the work programme. So maybe you'll be able to come back and help us, set that up.
That'd be fantastic. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for coming this morning. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we come to item 7, which is SIL and section 106. So we've got Lizzie Fippard, the Infrastructure Investment Officer, and Tracy Rathmell, Head of Delivery and Infrastructure, and they're coming in remotely. So Lizzie and Tracy, can you both hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you. Morning, everybody.
Fantastic. Good morning. Thank you for appearing.
Fabulous. Thank you very much for having us this morning. What we wanted to do is take you through some brief slides that we've prepared, and this is on the back of the briefing note that was sent to you in September around SIL and Section 106, setting out some key points and some key differences between those two developer contribution types. So I think one of the kind of key questions that was asked was around accessing money, which is something we wanted to explore with you today. Nikki, could we have the next slide, please? Can't see the... Oh, there we are. Perfect. So what we thought we would suggest is there's sort of obviously multiple different ways that we can access sort of funding. The first port of call should always really be through Section 106, mostly because with Section 106 legal agreements and the contributions associated with those, there's a limited time frame to spend that money. And obviously they're often tied to specific sort of parameters within the legal agreement with which we must spend them. So that's always the first port of call. In terms of how contributions are split, I think in terms of types of projects that you're most likely to come encounter with, it's likely to be through sort of open space and those sorts of related projects, which we have. So since we've had the new North Yorkshire Council come into being, Tracy and I sit within Delivery and Infrastructure, which is an arm of planning, and within that, our team, we look after the monitoring of Section 106 and SIL. So we have a team of officers in place which sort of look to take that money in, and we monitor that and make sure that it's sort of any information is passed to the right colleagues. So Parks and Grounds are a team within North Yorkshire Council, which look after any funds that have come forward from anything related to parks and open space. So that could include sports and leisure, or anything related to allotments or village halls and green infrastructure, etc. And they have a team of officers in place that work with communities to get this money spent, and they have a process in place which they do that. So they have a form that they use with communities that they fill in, and then there's like a formal procedure, but it's relatively straightforward, and they've done a fantastic job of spending lots of money in the last year since they've sort of come into post and done this. So I've spoken to them ahead of this meeting today, and mentioned to them about obviously your interest in being involved in this, and they absolutely are happy for councillors to promote available sums, and are really supportive of that. They're happy to share with you sort of guidance notes that they have, and also their form for filling that out. So I would say that's probably the best first port of call in terms of accessing money for infrastructure projects. Nikki, could we go to the next slide, please? And then after that, if there isn't any available money in commuted sums, then we can begin to explore SIL. So in terms of how SIL is split when it comes into us, as you may recall, 15% goes to the neighbourhood parishes to be spent on local projects. This increases to 25% if there is a neighbourhood plan in place, and that is up to the town or parish council in place to spend that money as they see fit on infrastructure projects. So we have some guidance notes that we produce and send to those parishes, sort of recommending that they try and do this in line with projects that, you know, will mitigate impact of development that they've seen, but there will potentially be sort of less money in areas where, you know, it's only where development's taken place that they would access, that they would have the SIL money. So that's another option, and obviously you would contact the parishes directly to look to get this money. When we send this money out, that's handled by the team that we sit in, and the legislation suggests that we do this twice a year, and that's in April and in October. So obviously we accumulate funds throughout the year, and those are the 2 times of year that we would then send money out to parishes. If you know, SIL isn't available through the neighbourhood parish, we also do have the strategic SIL pot, which is the 70 or 80% of SIL that's left and handled by the council to spend on strategic projects across that area. So as you may recall, it was agreed by executive a year or 2 ago that money collected in an area, so say if it's collected in Rydale, would be spent in Rydale, and the same with Hambleton. So those are the parameters, but outside of that we didn't have a strategic process in place, and that's a piece of work that we've been working on recently, and we are hoping to take a report to executive in December this month, on the 16th, which hopes to sort of start to address that. Could I have the next slide, please, Nikki? So what we will be doing and what we'll take to executive this month is firstly the infrastructure funding statement for 24-25. You may be familiar with these. These are sort of a document that we must produce, which sets out our income and expenditure for SIL and Section 106 throughout that financial year, and looks to try and promote projects that we're delivering. This is something that it's been on sort of an ongoing journey, and now that we've sort of come into one council, we've got a single document. Hopefully that document's starting to look a bit more exciting and user friendly. So we've got that hopefully going to executive this month. Alongside that is this infrastructure business plan, which is a new document we've produced, which sets out the strategic approach to spending the strategic SIL. So what it does is it sets out an assessment methodology, and we have then taken all the projects through this process, and included things like projects that not only have come forward through our officer working group, but also by looking to review the existing local plans and the infrastructure delivery plans that are associated with those, to see if there's any projects that are undelivered within those, and that relates to the allocated sites that were put forward in that local plan and the infrastructure that was seen at the time necessary to deliver those projects. So those have been considered within this realm as well. We've also carried out some very high level SIL forecasting to give us an indication of the sort of money that we might be looking to collect in SIL over the next few years. And this has been incorporated into the document so that as our pipeline of projects come through each year, we can consider what money we might be due to get, say, next year in relation to projects that aren't due to be delivered imminently. So we can consider it down the line slightly. So this is all, as I say, encapsulated within this document, and it's something that we will be producing each year as a living document so that we could take projects through this. So what I'm going to do now is take you through the assessment process. Nikki, could I have the next slide, please? Fabulous, thank you. So what we've done is set out a prioritisation category, which is colour coded, and what we would do is assess each project against these, and it would come out as one of the kind of colour coding categories. So critical in red is the ones which infrastructure must happen. This must take place in order for growth to sort of happen. So an example might be that if a school was at absolute capacity, obviously we would need to have an expansion there before we could see growth in that area. So that's a sort of example of a critical project. And then necessary in the orange category, those are ones where infrastructure needed to sort of mitigate the impacts of development that's taking place. And this links in with the delivery plans that I mentioned a moment ago, and those projects that were identified as part of the local plan. And then the third project, the third category, policy high priority, the green category. These are the top three in terms of ones we would be looking to potentially recommend. Anything that was in blue would probably not be considered. It would be, put back into the list to be considered in future years or not to be considered. But the green category is sort of ones which align with the local plan and the policies within it, and also the emerging local plan. So anything that's kind of coming through with this sort of category, we've then added an additional sort of assessment process to that, a second stage to the assessment process, which I've detailed in the next slide, please, Nikki. And these are some thematic groups. So if we're finding that projects are coming through as green, then we would look to see if they apply to any of these 4 categories, whether they have health and wellbeing benefits, if they support communities, if they have sustainable and active travel benefits, or if they have sort of climate infrastructure matters included in them. So that's it. If they didn't have any of these 4 thematic groups included within the project, then it wouldn't be probably something that we would consider, and they would most likely be seen more as desirable in that 4th category, the blue category. So in the next slide, I've put together a sort of flow chart there, sort of demonstrating the assessment process a little bit more clearly, just to give you a bit of context. So obviously the first sorts of questions we'll be asking is this project ready to go? Is it funded? If it's funded, then that's fantastic. We don't need to worry about it, but it's something that we can promote within the work and explain the infrastructure projects that are being delivered. But if it hasn't been, then it's something that we can look to consider. One of the first questions would be whether it's sort of needed to support development trajectories. If so, then we look at it and see if it's emerging as critical, if it's looking to be potentially necessary or policy high priority. And then if not, then if it's desirable, then it would be, you know, put back forward into for the future. What you probably will know if you read the document, there are a lot of projects that are kind of coming out as critical or necessary, but because they're not due to be delivered imminently, we've not necessarily considered them at this moment, but it's useful to know within that pipeline. So in terms of the document that we will be taking to executive this month, we've also made some spending recommendations within that. So I just wanted to take you through those now. The first thing to note is that we've recommended removing 2 of the existing commitments, which the first being the Norton Lodge Primary School commitment of £1 million from the Rydell pot. And the reason being is that we wanted to try and ensure that we weren't tying SIL money up to projects which aren't due to be delivered. And this is a project that we don't have any associated timescales with at this moment in time. So it's something that instead of having it as commitment, it would go into the sort of list of projects to be considered through this assessment process in the coming years. And once we have better understanding of what's needed, then it can be considered for physical funding recommendations at that time. And this is the same with a project in the Hambleton pot, which is the Bedale 3G pitch. There's a commitment of £330,000, which for the same reason doesn't have associated timescale for delivery at this moment in time. Mostly that's around the fact that they're doing the playing pitch strategy at the moment. So they're waiting to see the results of that and whether they wanted to take it forward as a strategic site. And so we'll know more in the coming years, and then we can consider it better at that moment in time. So those are the 2 recommendations in terms of existing commitments. And then on top of that, we have made recommendations for 3 projects for spending this year as well. Those are, the first one is the Easingwold Primary School expansion in Hambleton area. This is an area that's seen quite a lot of development over the last few years, and the school is in need of an expansion. There's feasibility work going on at the moment, and they're looking to deliver this next year, or begin to start to deliver this next year. There's some Section 106 funding available for that project already, of around 300,000. And I believe they're looking to pursue some money through their capital funding and basic needs funding pot that they have, which they don't have sufficient. So we've suggested topping this up with £300,000 from SIL to ensure that the project can then be fully funded to go ahead. And the second project is the Selby Road Gateway project in Selby. This is part of much wider strategic regeneration project with multiple phases. The first of that phase is the Station Gateway project, which is underway at the moment. This forms part of the Olympia Park phase. And this is a public realm improvement scheme along that road, which is one of the sort of town gateway entrances. And what they're wanting to do is improve a lot of the footways there and add a lot of sort of green infrastructure and really enhance the area to make that entrance to the town much more attractive and user friendly. So they're looking for £500,000 from that, which we've recommended from the SIL pot. And then the third project is in relation to the Slingsby Sports Club. This is obviously from the Rydell pot. This is a project that we believed was fully funded, and then it turns out that some of their funding has now been pulled. We've hoped that through the Mayoral Capital Fund, there may be most of the funding should be made up this way. They're due to consider that in December as well. If that goes ahead, there'll be a £4,000 funding gap remaining, which we've suggested we would fund through SIL. So that's where we are at the moment. And that's sort of what we're planning to do, and that's what we'll be taking to executive this month, as I say. And that's kind of the brief overview that we wanted to provide. Hopefully that addresses some of the questions that you'd raised, but obviously welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lizzie, for that report. So first question from Caroline.
Morning, Lizzie. Thank you for that. It's very pertinent because I had a phone call with the parish clerk just a couple of days ago asking me how she could get hold of money from the SIL pot, and they've got Section 106 monies to the tune of 28,500. So let's not go there. But I don't think they would have any access to SIL because I don't think there's been much development that would make that contribution. So I just want to ask a couple of questions about that, because parishes do come and ask for that, whether they can get the 15%. But more importantly, I take it we are still levying Section 106. I had a feeling that if you levy SIL, you don't get 106, but I could be wrong. And actually, more importantly, what input is coming in from the local members? How do the local members get input into this about where SIL is spent or Section 106 monies are spent? Because you know what? It's been very quiet on that front for a long time. Sorry, Lizzie.
No, that's no problem. I think in relation to how I'm not sure, Tracy, do you have any...
Do you want me to pick? I'll pick up the if you can pick up the parish council point, which is how we sort of let them know that they've got monies. In terms of wider member engagement in the SIL process, back in the summer, we invited all members to workshops on SIL and the process for how we were going to spend it. We offered in-person and online sessions, so all members were invited to that, and that was an opportunity to listen to and a more detailed presentation on a more detailed presentation of the one that Lizzie's prepared today, and it was an opportunity thereafter. We ran through all of the projects that were on our list, and it was an opportunity for members to comment on those. So all members should have received an invite to that. So that was how we were engaging with members for this year on the work ahead of taking a report to the executive with those recommendations in it.
In terms of how we let parishes know, when SIL's collected, as I say, we have those 2 points of it in April and October. That's when we would send money out, and any parishes that are due to receive money will receive emails directly from us with guidance on how to spend that money. In terms of Section 106 that's available, the Parks and Grounds team do a similar exercise, I believe it's every September. So any funds that they have available, they'll write out to the local parish council to tell them how much they've got and what's available and what it could be spent on. So there's definitely comms that's done around that, and all parishes should be aware of the money that's around. In terms of your question around levying Section 106 as well as SIL, I think obviously we would do this in Rydell still, because you are allowed to do both. But particularly around open space, I know in Rydell a lot of it's been on site with a lot of the developments that's taken place. So there's not necessarily been great amounts of Section 106 put through, but the Parks and Grounds team now do all the calculations, so they're consulted on any bigger developments, and they will sort of do a sort of review of the area to ensure that any sort of sites nearby, they've looked at the impact on those, and that's included in that assessment. Hopefully that answers your questions there, Caroline.
Thank you. Steve.
Thanks, Nigel. Could you clarify again that the ring fence £1 million for Norton Lodge School has now not been ring fenced anymore, particularly with the planning application coming forward on Tuesday, where there's a school being proposed in the planning application, situated next to the bacon factory, by the way, which I don't think is going down particularly well with odour and noise, but that's a planning debate. I'm not on planning, so I'm not predetermined myself. But with regards to Slingsby, quick, sorry to make this a bit parochial. And I know, Liz, you're in the conversation with an email conversation with Kate and the team there. I'm assuming you're aware of the situation with the Football Foundation money promise has now been withdrawn, and I can see you nodding. So, but if we're relying on the mayoral fund to fill this gap, and it's a £75,000 gap now, from what I understand, because they've been invited to apply for 25, not 99,000 now, because that's been pulled. If the mayoral fund doesn't fill up that gap, it seems to me, I'm just a little bit nervous that we make a decision on the 4,000 and that's it. That's a decision. Can we put a backstop in for this, for the decision to be made in contingency that the mayoral fund doesn't fill that gap? Because at the moment, the facility is not watertight, as you know. They've started the work under the promise of some of this money from different, I think 32 applications they've made to different funding people to get this money over the line. 32, that's all volunteers, by the way. And I think, you know, and my conversations with Marianne and Gary's, and in the last email was, we will get this over the line, but we need to make sure we put those contingencies in place in case the mayoral authority does not come in to fill that gap. I'm pushing Football Foundation myself to lift their grant, even to look at a match funding type offer. That sort of, do you see what I mean? So just to make sure that that decision of £4,000 isn't the final, oh, we've given them £4,000, now go away and find the rest of the money. I think particularly now there's £1 million that's not ring fenced in the Rydell Seal pot, there's more headroom to think about these projects a bit more.
Shall I pick that up, Lizzie, to kick it off? And
yeah, of course.
Yeah. So on that, Steve, I mean, the timings, I think, as Lizzie's alluded to, the mayoral funding should be determined in December as well. But I think from the conversations that we've had, I think we're reasonably confident that the money should be forthcoming, and that's why we're just running with a recommendation for the 4,000. I mean, if that doesn't happen, then we will have to, everything will have to be revisited in the future. But at the moment, we're working on the basis that they've had some very positive noises in relation to the mayoral fund, and therefore the 4,000 is what we're looking to put forward as a recommendation to members.
Sorry, have we put some supporting information into that application as a council, though? Are we not pressuring, that's the wrong word. Are we trying to support the application directly as North Yorkshire Council as well, to put the weight of the council behind the application as well? It does seem to be a sensible thing to do, even with the supporting letter from Marianne, for instance, or someone like that, just to help ease that conversation more forward.
Yeah, I believe that Marianne has been promoting the project. She seems quite confident that they will receive funding, and I know she's been very closely involved in it, and I think is quite closely involved in this funding grant as well anyway.
Positive, thank you. And the ring fence money for Norton?
Oh, in terms, do you mean the decision? What we're basically saying is we've had that Norton money's been sort of ring-fenced, I suppose, for a couple of years now. And there's always been questions about, well, you're putting the money aside, but there's no timescale for when the school might actually be needed. And even though there is a planning application, which is due to be determined in the not too distant future, it's my understanding, there's no need to spend the money in the next financial year. And what we're keen to do is to avoid tying up significant sums of money from sale when we don't have definite timelines for projects. So we've had ongoing conversations with our education colleagues so they understand what we're doing. We're not saying that we wouldn't spend still money on Norton School, but what we're saying is we're not considering it for a recommendation this year, and it'll go back into the pot for next year and for future years, depending on the timeline for that school.
That sounds quite positive as well, to be honest. I mean, I think I understand that 2.3 million of SIL is due to come from that development, as I understand reading in the paper. I think that's the sort of roller that we need to start getting forward a bit if we want to start building this infrastructure. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay.
Thank you. Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for the presentations, etc. I suppose the only point I would make, I mean, there's a Section 106 monies mentioned for the parish council I sit on, Hummonby, but the only reason that's there is because I asked about was there any money somewhere in the council, and it turned out there was, and it'd been there for 7 years. So I'm not saying that's happening now, but we need to get better at telling people that this money is available, because we have an active project, and I just probably want to get into that. With an active project, we had worked with North Yorkshire Council. We had a landowner who wanted to sell land to extend a local park, which, given that we're getting extra housing, having more public open space was a good thing to do. And the parish council was in a financial position to buy that land and take responsibility for it going forward, when there was no liability onto North Yorkshire Council or no management or everything else. So I do think it's also important with this, while there are obviously a lot of North Yorkshire projects here that need funding and still can get across the line, if we work with I think probably the bigger communities, there will be some smaller ones as well, in terms of how we manage, particularly I think things like Section 106. And I'll give you a really good example of how we've done it in Hummonby, which I think has been really helpful. Hummonby Parish Council already has significant amount of play areas. What it didn't want is more play areas that it had to spend more money on, but it had open space that it needs Section 106 that it can enhance and improve. So the planning applications that come through, generally speaking, have play areas on site that are going to be managed by a future management company, so we don't end up with the taxpayer taking the cost, but we still get extra play areas for children close to where they live. But we also then have those public open spaces that we are responsible for, which are a significant amount of space that we protect. And having the ability of, when applications come through, knowing that there are types of Section 106 that will match the type of projects we're trying to develop. And because we know there's more housing coming, whether people like it or not, we are actively looking at projects that we can move forward, that we can make deliverable, and we will use Section 106 towards them. But we do need some, at times when, there have been times when reports have come to planning where there has been no discussion with the parish council about the Section 106s discussed, because they don't align with the projects. And also we're in a position sometimes where and I'm sure there's other town and parish councils will come around and say, look, we've got projects that we can get across the line with SIL, where we will take the ongoing costs going forward and North Yorkshire Council won't. And that's actually in everybody's interest. And while I know I can see why we're going with certain projects, we need to be working with these town and parish councils, because we can still get things delivered for the public in the public realm that actually doesn't cost North Yorkshire any money, but it benefits everybody in North Yorkshire as well. So I just think we need more proactive talking, and we need to be realistic. I mean, I'm very realistic with my larger parish councils. These things are going to happen. You need to be ready with oven-ready projects to actually do something good from the impacts of what's going to happen. That's my view.
No, thank you very much for your comments there. I think what you're saying in terms of ensuring we're promoting the money that we've got, that's something that hopefully with the new processes we've got in place will definitely happen now going forward. The Parks and Grounds team took on all of the Section 106 money this year, and as we've been sort of figuring out all the data behind it, it's been a process throughout the year. But I think they did their first big mail out in September, and that was the first time that they emailed out to all parishes where there was any funding available, and that's something that they will do every year. So hopefully we won't have that issue moving forward, and hopefully as we kind of continue our relationships with parishes will continue to flourish.
Can I just say that in the parishes that I clerk, for the first time in many years now, Michelle, I'm actually aware what Section 106 money sits within the parish, and clearly what a parish council can spend or draw down that money for. So it certainly has been a revelation, I should say, in that first bill, and I welcome your assurance that that will be an annual thing, because I think if it is an annual thing, and like Michelle says, it has to be, I think that we'll be much more informed in our communities, because some of that money has been sat there for a long time, unknown to most of us in the communities. So I thank you and your team for delivering that.
Thank you.
Caroline.
Yeah, I just want to just put a little rider on this, and I'm very conscious that it's come up in the conversations this morning. Parish councils are all volunteers, they're not paid. Some of them have limited skills, and we're asking them to spend some significant sums of money. And this was what I meant by member engagement, because we need to be able to help them. And when a parish council has got a significant sum of money, it's how we help them make the right decisions and put the processes in place for them to get that money and deliver on what the money's been given for. It's very difficult when these parish councils are volunteers and perhaps only meet 4 times a year. So we need to be really conscious of what we're doing here, because it's their money. It's not our money, it's their money, and we need to help them. And I don't see that process, no disrespect, Lizzie, happening at the grassroots level. I mean, I'm trying to take Claxton and Sandhutton through a £28,500 process, and I've now got them thinking about that. But it's taken all this time, and now we're very short on time to deliver it meaningfully before we lose the money. It's an issue. Sorry.
No, I appreciate your comments. I mean the Parks and Grounds team have said that they really they want to promote the funds that we've got available, and they were very supportive of councillors being involved in that. So if it's something that they can let ward members know as well as parishes, if that would be of use, that they were very open to that. I think that's something that we could discuss with them.
I think generally as well, I mean, we've got literally hundreds of parish councils across North Yorkshire, haven't we? And we are acutely aware that each of those parishes has a different sort of ability to engage, and so some parishes are much more active than others. But the work that we're doing in our team to help support those parishes that are liable to SIL funding, then we're certainly trying to provide more guidance to support them. And as Lizzie has said, our Parks and Grounds colleagues, which is probably the most interaction the parishes will have in terms of available monies, then they are trying to engage more proactively. It will be a process, and hopefully as time moves on, we will be able to provide parish councils with more support and guidance. But it's, we're aware of the issues and we are working to resolve it, but we're not going to solve it overnight. So I can't make any sort of, overnight promises. But I think what we can say is that we're starting that dialogue and we want to certainly keep it going.
Thank you. Janet.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, just a couple of questions, please. I just wondered, I might have missed something, why a development in Kirby Moorside division can provide money for something in a completely different division, which is my division, Thorntondale and the Wolds. That's the first question. And secondly, the second point I want to make is, as a parish council, now parish councillor, I've received notification. It's been really helpful. But what happens if a village doesn't have a parish council and they've got SIL money? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So in relation to your first question, I'm not sure I'm aware of which. Are you talking about a specific example there of monies from Kirby Moorside?
I'm looking at page 35 of our document. and page 11 of the report. It says Thorntondale and the Wolds division, parish, Foxholes with Butterwick, and then the development name is West End Mews, Kirby Moorside.
I think, well, this is the information that's been provided from the Parks and Grounds team in terms of the funding that they've got available. I can raise that with them because I'm not too sure on that
I
myself.
think Nikki has an update on that.
Lizzie, is this the change that, is this my fault? Is this the change that was made on the first version of that document that was sent out last area committee? That may be my fault, Councillor Sanderson. I'm sorry, I've maybe attached the wrong version. I think it was edited last time, wasn't it?
So it sounds like it's an administrative error, Janet.
So just to clarify that Kirby Moorside development will remain the Kirby Moorside division and not.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, because it's quite a big sum, and I thought, oh gosh, yeah, right. Lovely.
No, that's yeah, sorry about the confusion there. In terms of your other question around parishes where we receive money that there isn't a parish council in place, that does happen, and we have collected some funds. In Harrogate, for instance, we've just got the Harrogate Town Council, but for a period of time we were collecting money for them before they became the town council, and we do have some, particularly around Hambleton. There's quite a few areas where we don't, and I think that money is available for them to spend. We can work with community groups if the ward members want to get involved to help find projects. That would be fantastic. I've detailed them all in this year's infrastructure funding statement, all the pots where we have any funding where there's no parishes. I just off the top of my head can't remember which ones they are, and I can certainly circulate that, but as I say, it will be in the infrastructure funding statement. If I can find the latest one quickly, I will. I can explain them. Bear with me one moment.
I have one in my division, which is Kirby Grindley has no parish council. We've just done a community governance review, and yet there's money in the sale pot.
Okay. Yeah, okay. And so in those instances, that can still be spent within the area. We would just need to work with community groups. And obviously, if the ward members would like to be involved, that would be fantastic.
Thank you, Steve.
To be honest, I've got to say the engagement that we've had over the past year has been incredibly useful. I think the list that we asked for, gosh, months ago now, I think, Lizzie, that you sent out, that identified the money in Slingsby at the time was really, really useful. And I think, as Joy is saying as well, just being copied into some of this as council, I'm finding actually, I don't know whether the councillors find this, that we seem to get cut out of conversations as councillors with officers and community groups at a regular basis, and then conversations have gone down the line, and then all of a sudden you're sort of playing catch up all the time. And I do wonder whether we should, copying us in on this information, even an annual statement of the current situation of the SIL funding for local members in the area is really useful, because I know in my area the parish council in Slingsby wasn't even aware, or they had that money in the pot, and now it's been released. And I think Chair of Parish Council Fiona has been marvellous at actually facilitating that process, which we didn't realise that £12,000 was actually in that pot. So I think it's really valuable just to make sure as members we are kept in case, particularly in the case of Janet's ward, when you've got parishes that don't have a parish council, it should move up to the member. At least they have the nose to the ground, so to say. But thank you for your engagement. It's been really useful.
No problem at all. Thank you.
It's a good point, Steve. I mean, I think, I sometimes feel that projects are well down the line in discussions before I'm aware of it by a community group. And then it's like, well, why didn't I know about this from the beginning? Yeah. So I think simply sometimes officers just copying us in is all they need to do, not to engage with us personally, but just copy us in at those early stages. So we don't need to get involved. It's just knowing that those conversations are happening, I think would be a really, really useful for us all. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, Alison.
The good idea to let your parish councils know that if they're asking anything, they copy you in, because unfortunately, if the officers reply, they will not copy you in. And, you know, and this is on all issues.
Yes. Agreed. Yes. I do try and copy my councillors in. Thank you very much, Steve, because I do copy Steve in, so he knows that. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Lizzie and Tracy, for coming this morning. That's been, I think, really helpful for members, and hopefully there's a few things that we've raised that you might want to have a discussion about as well. But thank you for the work and the big improvement that has been, certainly in the last 6 months. We've all noticed that we're much more knowledgeable about the pots that are available. But I thank you both for attending this morning.
No, that's great, and good to hear that you're getting better information. That's really helpful. Thanks, then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
So we now move on to item 8, which is the work programme. So I think, Steve, obviously, you've raised that one today.
Yeah, we've already discussed that.
I think we know where we're going with that. So around the youth councils.
It is rather complex at the moment with us having the interim director of children's services and the other one. You know, it's which state we want it. So I think I don't want to push it back. I want to drive it because I think it's really we've all agreed on it. But I think we just have to look at the timing and how we might progress it.
Okay. Well, we'll work with the officers and try and get that. We'll bring it back to the next meeting, hopefully.
I mean, we start the process with the community element of it, at least work out what the framework is. So when they come into play, some of the work's already been done, rather than jumping onto that directorship's desk straight away and go, right, off we go and do. But maybe we can have a conversation with the other parts of the machine, if you like. So, well, how do we just make it a little bit easier for them to come in? Because I'm pretty sure they're going to have a hell of a job when they come in.
Alison.
We've had a lot of discussion today where we've kicked the mayor's office. I just wonder if it should be a matter of every area committee should have a representative from the mayor's office at it to cut, because I wonder if there's a representative of the mayor's office at York Council, for instance, which is the equivalent of us, because then at least there would be a communication. I just wonder if that might be a thing that we suggest going forward so that they are aware that we are happy or unhappy with what's going on.
I just wonder how effective that would be, really, sending somebody along.
But at least they'd flipping know.
He is scheduled to come to this.
Michelle. I think it's a choice.
Well, I don't think what Alison suggests will work. I do think there is a broader problem with the mayor's office announcing things like, I'm going to put a speed camera up in Sherburn, and then gets knocked down 24 hours later because he didn't tell anybody. And if he'd have told me in advance, I would have warned them that the speed camera would get knocked down within 24 hours. But hey, just local members tend to know these things, right? So there seems to be a problem. And I do wonder if we need some form of member protocol between this council and the combined authority around what is expected, etc. Because there is a problem with communication, and I know the members have had a problem where things have been announced in the media and they hadn't got a clue, and there's just no consultation with local members or even the courtesy of information. And sometimes it's good news, it's not always bad news. So I don't want to say everything he does, because sometimes it's great news, you think fantastic. But there just seems to be, there's a silo mentality, and I think we'd rather work together than just read about things and then get upset about it in the media.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, that might be a first starting point. We can ask for a written update, just as we do with the MPs, and let's see if that teases something out. Because if they do a written report to us, then we can reply to that written report. So that might be one way. I think Michelle, you're quite right with the whole engagement between us and the engagement with individual members in their divisions. And I suppose that is a council-wide thing we need to take up to build a protocol. So that's probably not for this committee, but I think we can definitely, as this committee, ask the Mayor's office to do us a report just as the MPs do. Steve. Oh yes. Oh yeah. 100%. Yeah. Not just a general. No. We want what are your activities? What have your activities been in Thirsk and Malton since the last meeting? Yeah.
Like, as our MPs do, every committee give us either personal attendance or a written update, and so
Yeah.
Phrase it that way might have a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, Michelle, come back on that. Yeah.
I noticed a couple of colleagues have just said, ask him. I've sent messages to the Mayor's office. I have not had adequate answers. I've put in FOIs, they have not been responded to, which is against the law. I understand other individuals, members of the public, are not getting legally compliant responses to the FOI. So it's all right saying you get answers. It seems to me if you're part of a particular fan club, you get answers, but elected members are not always getting answers because they're not all on the same page as the mayor. And I'm sorry, but that's what's happening.
I agree with you. And the times I've needed to engage with the Mayor's office, all I've got is a wall of silence. And I completely agree. Sam. Microphone, sorry, Sam. Sorry.
Yeah, I think we've all said it. I think we should try and get some engagement. But if they don't want to engage, we can't really do anything about it.
No, we can't. If they don't want to, if he doesn't want to engage, then we can't make him. But at least we've tried our best at our end. I think that's the secret. Caroline.
No, take George.
Okay,
first.
George.
Yeah, just to add that in the last full council meeting, there was a proposal from Councillor Andrew Murday to have arrangements for reporting back to full council by the York and North Yorkshire Combined Authority Overview and Scrutiny Committee. So that's another possibility to ensure there is better communication between the mayoral combined authority as a whole and full council. So that's going to go into constitution working group in March. So maybe that's what has been discussed today is something else that could be added to that agenda to see better and more effective communications between the two bodies.
Thanks for reminding us of that, George. Yeah, it's a good point. So we can feed our concerns into that committee's considerations as well. Okay, Caroline.
Yeah, thanks. Because I sit on overview and scrutiny, and the pace of development at the mayoral combined authority. If I said it was a snail's pace, that's probably too quick. Do you know what I mean? I'm really frustrated about how long all this is taking. And I know it's new, but the whole concept of combined authorities isn't new. So I'm deeply frustrated as a member of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee that, we are really, really slow about this, to the point where I raised about planning as a mayoral function. There is nobody in planning at the mayoral combined authority. It's not even on the radar at the moment. So God help us. But I wonder, do we send the minutes from our area constituency meeting to the mayoral combined authority and ask them for any input? But perhaps that might be a way first. Yeah,
if we could.
And also, it may be that it's a huge area. The man can't get around everybody, and I accept that. But there could be members of his team that are allocated to deal with Thirsk and Malton and want to deal with Craven and Richmond or whatever, so that there is some input. Because right now, he's got all this money the government have given him, and there's a huge disconnect. The elected members of this county have no input on what's going on. None at all. And it's really frustrating. And it's all right him saying, we'll survey this, that and the other. But we were elected to represent those communities and we're not being asked. Sorry, rant over.
Right. So I think we're slightly drifting, but all those points about the communication with the mayor, so we can send him the minutes. We can ask him to do a report on what he's been delivering in Thirsk and Malton. We can feed into the scrutiny committee about the wider engagement and holding to account. And so we can do all that. But as far as the work programme is concerned, the only one I've got from there to add to the work programme is the youth councils. So if we can, yeah.
Well, I mean, that's going on up there.
Yeah, I think it's not just. I mean, it's not just Thirsk and Malton. I mean, it's across the county. Is the Yorkshire Water are failing? Steve.
We've been trying to get them into the Transport Environment Committee as well. We can't get them in there either. There is conversations going on at Richard Flinton level with the executive, but nobody seems to know what those discussions are going on. Perhaps the questions in turn should be asked.
So could we, Nikki, request an update on that from Richard's office? Can we have an update on? I think if we can just ask for an update to be circulated to members about the situation with the Yorkshire, where are we at with the Yorkshire Water discussions? That's fair enough. Yeah, and we'll just circulate that around. We don't need it on the agenda.
I mean, this is a local parochial battle at the moment with the growth of houses, and you've had a bit of a ding dong a little bit about the Grampian rule being used. It's just they're going to just use our seal money at some point. That's what they're after. They want us to pay for it. That's got to go another thing. Was that finished, that item?
So we can the work programme. I think now everyone's.
I just have another one.
Okay.
And it's related to a report that's on the quiet lanes.
Right. So that is that's item 9.
Yes, but for the work.
But you want it on the
I'd like to dig into that a bit more, because the report in there is from 2006.
Yeah.
And it's a bit. Maybe could we request we have some updated information on the status around the country, because in Suffolk there's 300 quiet lanes.
And we've only got.
Yes, but it's still the old report, as what I can see. I think that's the plan with the speeding review paper, but I'd like to put forward that we as an ACC can identify potential lanes that can be allocated for this. But the criteria is really.
So wait a minute, Steve. So if we can move on from the work programme and move to item 9, where we're receiving those reports. So we've got the GP surgeries report, the business banking report, and the quiet lane report. So out of the quiet. So it's a lane. Okay, so we've got one quiet lane, I believe, in SEMA, and it's about making people aware that it's a mixed space and not simply for traffic. It's where lanes are narrow and they're heavily pedestrian used. It's a scheme that's been used in other parts of the country.
It is.
And I think Steve's point was that what we wanted. There was a particular lane that you had thought would make a good pilot. Or
I have one in mind, but I think that the wider conversation for many of the out areas, and it's around the path road, the one project and everything else. I mean, I know from Malton to Helmsley, Malton through the national landscapes. I know from Pickering to Malton we have the cycle route. And it's just about giving people more confidence. In Suffolk, they have 350. And what it does, it is just changes the status slightly of that road away from a rat run, which is the one in my ward, into something that's more welcoming for horse riding, for cyclists and cars. This is not an anti-car thing. It's just changing that status so there's more responsibility for more active travel being included, and connectivity has to be part of this as well. I was going to propose actually we do a test on the Pickering to Malton cycle route, which is already established. And I know it was looked at a few years ago from Kirby Middleton to Pickering on that route there, but there's no cars on that route. That seemed a bit pointless. But there's a stretch between Wrighton and Kirby Middleton Lane, which is hardly used by cars, but when they do use it, by God, they're using it. It's just changing that framing and that status. I think I touched on this with the guy on the speeding review.
Microphone.
That's right. Yeah. But in Suffolk, it seems to have worked really well in the rural areas because there's 300 now.
Oh, yeah, microphone, yeah.
through you.
Yeah, sure.
It's quite unique that the sort of geography and the existing network has got to be sort of set up for it. It's not something you can design. It tends to lend itself to it through existing sort of road network. Yeah, and the one between the one I know about, the children walk from Crossgates to Seamer School. It's a safe sort of area. Yeah, it works well when if it fits if it fits the model. Yes.
Well, I actually think that this is the role the ACC could actually perform in actually coming up with recommendations that each ward member in this ACC we can use. I know of 3 or 4 lanes in my ward, not that many, to be fair. There's a couple, particularly in the national landscapes, I think would be really useful, and Hareham, for instance, as well. Some of the back routes to Eberston, not Eberston. Anyway, there's some of those roads would be really, really good. But I think the intel, again, it's local intel. I think the ACC can perform well. So I think give us some of that.
Well, the least, I mean, I think the least we can do is identify lanes for investigation, definitely. So well, maybe we can bring something to a future thing about maybe have an officer engage with us on the quiet lanes, and we can feed into that officer our recommendations of where we think in our localities where it might be worth looking at.
So this came up with a conversation with Keisha Moore, who's looking at the active travel paths for everyone project that we backed here as an ACC, and it was a suggestion that came through them that they actually pointed me towards the quiet lane status in Suffolk and places like that whole organisation. So Keisha, I think, would be a really good person to speak to first, and probably the team behind the Pass for Everyone. I think they've got the expert knowledge that we can lead into.
Nick, if you could then reach out to Keisha and just see what the thoughts are and about what they think they could bring to this meeting and what they'd want from us. I think that's probably, and we can talk about that in the interim meeting and look at that for a work program item. Yeah. Yeah, Caroline.
Sorry, I just wanted to raise one thing because we've kind of glossed over and gone to quiet lanes, and I've no problem.
No, you can jump back on another one. Yeah, sure.
Drop back on the banking.
Yeah, of course you can.
Because thank you very much for the report. It's really useful. However, I have been told and informed by a couple of my banks that they are no longer in the new year going to accept cheques being deposited at the post office.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be, it's another step. You have to do it on your phone, which is fine if you're IT literate on your phone. But for our elderly population, that's going to be another difficulty that they've got. And I'm really annoyed by this. It's just again a withdrawing in of what facilities are available. And so I just raise it as an issue because this has only just come up in the last few weeks.
Can we
Sorry.
Can we feed that back to the officer, Nikki, and just ask them if they're aware? Sorry.
No.
What was it?
You can't get them in.
Okay, all right. So we looked at quiet lanes of business banking. Has anybody got any comments on the GP surgeries?
I just wondered, not all surgeries are on here? Is there a? Because
I had no intention to miss anybody out. It's just that they're the ones I could find and do off.
But thank you for that, Nikki. But of course, in my neck of the woods, we go to Northallerton as well, and also there is one at Topcliffe, which I gather is quite a well-used overflow one for the ones in Thirsk.
Okay, Greg, did you have something?
Did you want?
Okay.
Sorry, did Councillor Baker want me to add?
Do you want those added, Alison? Do you want those surgeries added to the report, or for future information? Yeah.
Can I just
yes.
comment on that? It's particularly prevalent where you cross border.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of cross border. They go to York. They go into East Yorkshire.
No, I know. Well,
the residents are really suffering. with these surgeries because they don't have anywhere else to go.
It's a sort of
Yeah, if you can just try and do around the borders, just to mop those up, Steve. Right.
Thank you. Yeah, it was I requested this information onto the to this agenda just to I don't know about other councillors, but I get lots of complaints about my GP surgery coming to me. And I just didn't know what powers, if any, we have. I know it's always mentioned at planning, and I know we're looking at the local plan, and I do explain to them that they are a private business and they can run their model how they see fit. And I just didn't know, obviously, like if somebody applies for an extra cafe in the town, we allow it because it's good for competitiveness, competition's good, etc. And I just didn't know whether we have the ability to request another GP surgery or anything like that, because as it is, there is no competition, and sometimes competition's healthy. No, no, I just wanted to know a bit more about Doctor and how our role as councillors is aligned with it. I had a very interesting conversation with the Councillor Moncrief before the meeting, which she answered a lot of my questions. So I was just trying to explain why it was on there and why Nikki got the stuff to us quite quickly, because I only mentioned it the other week. So thank you, Nikki, for getting all that information so quickly. But yeah, I just think it's going to be a problem more and more as we go forward. But maybe.
No, let me show him. I've let you in loads, Steve, this time. Yeah, reply, yeah.
Sorry, I haven't got a microphone and I'm starting to lose my voice. Typical Friday. I do have a contact in the ICB, or one of the string of initials, I can't remember who I ran that report past. So I wonder if it might be worth perhaps seeing somebody can come to the committee.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, Michelle.
I think this is one of my pet subjects that I've been pursuing for years. And you know, when you have a suspicion that something's gone wrong somewhere, and I know for time as you talk to various people, they start telling you, yes, you are right. And I won't say who I've spoken to, but it is various people across who have first-hand knowledge of what's going on. I think it is very clear to me, just as Yorkshire Water is a problem, that the ICB is a serious obstacle to progress on this issue in relation to development. In fact, so serious that I don't think it's fit for purpose.
No. Well, I think in our presentations that we received on Monday, I think it was stated that the ICBs are in meltdown. I think it was meltdown was the word that was used.
But one thing that's also very clear to me, just as we were discussing Section 106 and SILS today, there is no communication between the ICB and doctor surgeries about Section 106 that is available to them. There's no discussion with them about the fact that you might want to actually expand. And indeed, I'm aware of a conversation where somebody at North Yorkshire Council kept saying to them, are you sure that this surgery is not going to need to expand in the future because of future house building? And the NHS went, no, it'll be fine. Only to come back years later and say, we do actually need to expand. And everybody's sitting there. And I'm at a loss how anybody, you don't need to know anything about demographics. You don't need to know anything about planning. It is as clear as day, as clear as the nose on people's faces, that there needs to be additional capacity. Now, the one that I've got local to me, its biggest problem at the moment is people keep trying to transfer from other surgeries because they're not happy with it. It's just like that. That's its biggest problem. And the question is, there's always a balancing act there for them as a business. But ultimately, you're not going to turn down business if somebody comes to you and wants to. But I think where we should not we need to be unfortunately, we need to intervene in this probably more than we think we do. We cannot leave it to the NHS. We've got to, not just through planning, but us as local members. And I've been talking to a local surgery. We need to be actually talking to them and telling them what's going on and asking them to start asking questions, because they're not being given the information they need to do the right planning for their business either.
Okay.
And that worries me very much.
All right. Thanks, Michelle. Steve.
Brilliant. So I had this conversation. It goes back to the Beverley Road thing when we was at Rydale. So we contacted local surgeries in the area and said, would you like them to give you a property on that estate for a new surgery? Local one said, no, don't want it. So we thought, okay, we'll ask another surgery. None of them in the area wanted to A, tread on the toes of that one, or B, expand, partly because of the capacity, partly because they didn't have the staff in the area because there was nowhere to live. So but I think there is a conversation through planning here, and you're right, Michelle, about as in our development plan that we can probably take this up to the development plan and say part of the infrastructure needs to be having that conversation with the ICB. But from on the ground, the surgeries weren't particularly interested.
That's what exactly happened through the planning, and the new supermarket and petrol station in Easingwold has got a medical facility part of that.
Yeah.
Part of that.
I'm not sure whether they've actually taken up the interest in that.
The mayoral looking at little hubs or something where you
Yeah,
health hubs as well.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, yeah. What?
It came up in this. Oh, you went to a seminar in Ripon
No.
looking at one.
Yeah. Okay, but then again, you can give them a nice shiny new building, and if their business model is not how patients want it to be, they go. I mean, everybody complains when it goes wrong, and nobody's rejoicing. I mean, I'm sure they all perform minor miracles every day.
Okay,
But
I'll take Alison, and then what we'll do is we'll get this on the work programme because we're discussing it all now, and we need to really discuss it with an officer who comes to present. So, Alison.
Why don't the doctors think like that?
Yeah.
Why don't the dentists think like that?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. So we'll get that on the work programme, and we can have a full discussion about that.
The problem is we haven't got trained GPs to populate any new surgeries. That's the we haven't got the trained GPs to populate the surgeries we've got. Never mind populate new surgeries.
I think we really want to. Okay, right, Greg.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise the possibility of adding something to the work programme. Is that
Of course. Yeah, go ahead.
So, colleagues will be aware that it's a hobby horse of mine about the sort of scattering of roadworks, which seem to defy. Well, they have traffic restrictions on them, but the bit about roadworks doesn't seem to apply because there never seems to be anybody working on them for a lot of the time. That the traffic restrictions are in place, there doesn't seem to be people working on them. Responsibility for managing roadworks and traffic management actually lies within this council, so it's one of our responsibilities. Up until now, I've been beating up the local area highways manager, Richard, but ultimately it's not his responsibility. The responsibility, there's a separate road works team, permits team. And I would very much like to see someone senior from that team come here and explain to us how it works, what are their abilities, what they can and can't do, because it feels to me like this is something that's not a budgetary thing. It's whether or not we're doing all we can within the powers that we have.
Yeah.
And frankly, I've raised it again and again and again, and everybody says you seem to have a fair point there, Greg, and nothing ever changes.
Right. I think it's a really good point because I'd like a much better understanding about how the permits work and everything. So could we put that on the work programme and get somebody from whoever does permits? Oh, have you done Richmond? Brilliant. So we can do that. Steve. Yeah. Go on.
So it's
Greg. Yeah.
To your point, actually, not just them. This is a procurement issue. And so we're procuring these services. We're procuring some of the work was being done by our own people.
I think Greg's talking about like utilities working upon the highway.
No, hang on. I have an issue in Swinton. They were doing an expansion in Swinton. It was a council-led initiative, and then it went over 4 weeks of closing the road because there was no one there doing the work, and it was blamed on the contractor going off to do another job. So I think we need to look at the issue quite deeply about this as well because they've got more money, I reckon. For the council to go, oh, okay then. Well, actually, I think we need to be pushing back on that because we are a customer as well, and it's costing us as a councillor. I'm getting it in the year. I'm like, I can't do anything about it. You know, it's not our fault. So I think you're right, Greg. I fully support this, and Newsham Bridge comes to mind as well, because the initial work on Newsham Bridge hasn't been done since February, and it's now gone again, and it's costing a hell of a lot of money. So I did raise this with Carl Baxby about this and say, sort it out.
Okay, Greg, you come back on that.
Yeah, I mean, Newsham Bridge, I would have been in time for this meeting if that hadn't been closed. I didn't shut again. No, exactly. The reason, thank you very much for your support on that, Steve, and I think generally I get a lot of support for the idea of looking into this. One thing I would stress is that the council make a big deal about lane rental. That doesn't affect us. They've taken our miles of road and justified that for a percentage, which is actually going to be in Harrogate and Scarborough. We're not going to be, so I'm not less interested in lane rental. I'm more interested in what we can do within the current permit scheme that actually affects the
let's
area.
get that on the work programme, Nikki. Brilliant. Right, I'm going to move on. Item 12. Any other business? I haven't had any, so I think we can move on. No, and any other business with the chairman considers as a matter of urgency then.
Christmas.
Oh. Thank you very much, Steve. Date and time of next meeting, 2 p.m. Friday, 23rd January. So as Steve says, 2026. Oh yes, that's a budget break. Yeah, that's right. And then 27th of March. So
so it's a Teams meeting.
Teams, yeah.
The one in January, Teams meeting.
Teams meeting in January, yeah.
And March in person.
Okay. Merry Christmas.